Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. 5 years ago, my grandfather passed away. Among the few possessions he left behind was a beautiful 5-acre parcel of wooded land that had been in our family for generations. This wasn't just any piece of property. It was a pristine woodland sanctuary, complete with a babbling creek that cut through one corner, several century-old oak trees, and a small clearing where my grandfather had built a modest cabin decades ago. The property sits adjacent to what is now an upscale neighborhood. When my grandfather purchased the land in the 1950s, the entire area was rural countryside. Over time, developers bought up surrounding farmland and transformed it into an exclusive community with sprawling homes and manicured lawns. Despite numerous offers over the years, my grandfather refused to sell his piece of paradise. "This land is our family's heart," he would tell me during our fishing trips to the creek. "Money comes and goes, but land like this is irreplaceable." After his passing, I became the legal owner of the property. Though I lived about an hour away in the city, I made a point to visit every few weeks to maintain the cabin, clear fallen branches, and simply enjoy the serenity of the place. I kept it natural but managed, exactly as my grandfather would have wanted. One important detail about my property: despite being physically adjacent to the fancy neighborhood, it was legally separate. My land predated the development and was never incorporated into their community or their homeowners association. This fact would become crucially important. Last spring, I hadn't been able to visit the property for nearly 3 months due to work commitments and some family matters. When I finally made the drive out there on a beautiful Saturday morning, something seemed off as I approached the familiar dirt road leading to my cabin. My stomach dropped when I saw them. Bright orange survey stakes were driven into the ground in a grid pattern across my property. Worse yet, a large "Coming Soon" luxury home sign had been placed near the entrance, featuring the logo of a local development company. As I stood there bewildered, a woman walking her dog approached from the neighborhood side of the property. "Exciting, isn't it?" she said cheerfully. "The board finally found a way to develop this eyesore. Property values should jump by at least 15% once those beautiful homes are built." "Excuse me," I replied, too shocked to say much else. "Oh, this old forgotten land," she waved dismissively. "The HOA has been trying to acquire it for years. Chairman finally made it happen. There's going to be a community meeting about it next week." I thanked her for the information and waited until she was out of sight before pulling out the survey stakes and taking down the sign. My mind was racing. How could anyone be marketing my property without my knowledge or consent? I needed answers. After some digging through local real estate listings and making a few phone calls posing as an interested buyer, I discovered my land was indeed being marketed for sale. The listing described it as premium undeveloped land perfect for 10 luxury home sites with a portion allocated for community green space. The listing agent was a real estate company owned by none other than the chairman of the HOA himself. I scheduled a meeting with the HOA board, which convened in the neighborhood clubhouse. The chairman, a retired banking executive in his 60s with a permanent scowl, barely looked up from his papers when I entered the room. "We have a full agenda tonight, so state your business quickly," he said without introducing himself. "My business is simple," I replied, placing my property deed and recent tax receipts on the table. "I own the wooded property adjacent to your neighborhood, and someone has placed survey stakes and for sale signs on my land without my permission. I've discovered it's being marketed for development through your real estate company." The chairman finally looked at me, his expression changing from annoyance to something more calculated. "Ah, yes, the abandoned woodland. Listen, young man, that property has been a source of community concern for some time. Unmaintained, overgrown, attracting wildlife that disturbs residents. Our HOA bylaws allow us to incorporate adjacent properties that pose safety or aesthetic concerns. My property isn't abandoned, and it's certainly not part of your HOA," I countered. "It's privately owned land that predates your development by decades." The chairman exchanged glances with the other board members before continuing. "Perhaps you don't understand the complexities of property law in this county. Given the condition of the land and its location, it falls under our sphere of influence. We've had municipal inspectors out there who agree." This was a complete fabrication, but he stated it with such confidence that I momentarily second-guessed myself. "Regardless," he continued, "we've already collected significant deposits from interested buyers and engaged architects for the subdivision planning. I'm prepared to offer you $20,000 as a courtesy, which is more than fair given the condition of the property." $20,000 for 5 acres of pristine woodland adjacent to a luxury development? The property was worth at least 20 times that amount. "That's absurd," I replied. "The land isn't for sale at any price, and you have no legal right to list it. I expect all marketing materials to be removed immediately, and any deposits returned to potential buyers." One of the board members, A woman with a tight smile chimed in. "We understand this might be shocking, but the chairman is trying to help you avoid legal headaches. Your property has been cited for numerous code violations: unmaintained undergrowth, potential fire hazards, unsecured structures." "What violations? From which authority?" I asked. "County Code Enforcement," the chairman stated flatly. "The fines are substantial and increasing daily. Our offer would cover those costs and leave you with a tidy profit." I knew they were bluffing. I'd maintained regular contact with the county about the property and kept it in compliance with all relevant regulations, but their coordinated approach made it clear this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated attempt to intimidate me into giving up my land. "I'll be in touch," I said, gathering my documents and leaving before my anger got the better of me. Over the next week, I discovered just how far they had gone with their scheme. Not only had they created fake listings, but they'd also been spreading rumors throughout the community about my abandoned property being a haven for drug activity and dangerous wildlife. They'd even had landscaping crews trespass onto portions of my land visible from the neighborhood to clean it up for showing to potential buyers. The final straw came when I drove past my property one evening and saw cars parked along the access road and people walking around my land with champagne glasses. The chairman was hosting an open house for potential buyers, on property he didn't own. I parked and quietly approached close enough to overhear his pitch to the gathered crowd. "Each home site will be approximately half an acre, with shared access to the community nature area along the creek," he was saying, gesturing toward my grandfather's cabin. "That old structure will be removed, of course, to make way for a tasteful pavilion and picnic area." When one potential buyer asked about the current ownership, the chairman smoothly explained that the acquisition was in its final phases and that the current owner was eager to sell to the right community-minded developer. I'd seen and heard enough. It was time to fight back, but I needed to be strategic. Taking on an entire HOA would require more than just righteous anger. My first step was finding the right attorney. I needed someone who specialized in property law and had experience dealing with aggressive HOA. After interviewing several lawyers, I found one who had successfully represented landowners against development encroachment. "This is actually more common than you might think," my attorney told me during our first meeting. "HOA sometimes develop a sense that their authority extends beyond their legal boundaries, especially when they have people in leadership with real estate interests." Together, we developed a multi-pronged approach. First, we gathered evidence of everything: photographs of the unauthorized survey stakes and marketing materials, recordings of conversations with HOA members discussing the acquisition, copies of the fraudulent listings, and documentation of the trespassing incidents. We also researched the chairman himself. My attorney's investigator discovered this wasn't his first attempt at such a scheme. In 2 previous communities where he'd served on HOA boards, there had been similar situations where adjacent properties were mysteriously incorporated into development plans without clear ownership transfer. While building our legal case, I also took action to protect the land itself. I applied for and received designation as a private wildlife conservation area through the state's Environmental Protection Program. This status came with additional legal protections against development and recognized the property's ecological value due to the mature forest and the creek that supported several protected species of amphibians. I installed proper no trespassing signs along with notices about the conservation status. I also placed trail cameras at strategic points across the property to document any further incursions. The chairman's reaction was swift. Within days of the conservation signs going up, they were torn down. 2 days later, a county truck appeared, and workers began posting code violation notices on trees along the perimeter. I approached them and requested to see the official documentation, only to discover they were legitimate county employees working on falsified work orders that had somehow been entered into the system. My attorney immediately contacted the county commissioner's office, and the false violations were rescinded with an internal investigation launched into how the fraudulent orders were processed. The HOA next move was to call an emergency meeting about the environmental hazards posed by my property. They hired an expert who presented a report claiming my land was leaching contaminants into the groundwater that supplied the neighborhood. This report was sent to regional media outlets and environmental agencies. Fortunately, my wildlife conservation application had already included comprehensive soil and water testing, which proved there were no contaminants present. In fact, the water quality in my creek was pristine. The environmental agencies dismissed the HOA claims, further damaging their credibility. Through all of this, I maintained my composure and followed my attorney's advice to document everything while preparing for the right moment to take decisive action. That moment came when I learned the chairman had scheduled a major event for potential investors and buyers, to be held at the neighborhood clubhouse with a special tour of the future development site. The morning of the event, my attorney filed comprehensive legal actions against the HOA, the chairman personally, and his real estate company. The charges included fraud, trespassing, defamation, and misrepresentation. We also filed for an emergency injunction preventing anyone associated with the HOA from entering or marketing my property. As the chairman was leading his group of potential investors toward my property line for their tour, they were met by myself, my attorney, and 2 sheriff's deputies who served the chairman with the legal papers. "This property is a registered wildlife conservation area and private property," I stated loudly enough for all the investors to hear. "Any entrance onto this land without the owner's permission constitutes criminal trespassing." The chairman's face flushed red. "This is a misunderstanding," he stammered to the group. "A minor legal technicality that will be resolved quickly." My attorney stepped forward. "There's no misunderstanding. We have documented evidence that you have fraudulently marketed land you do not own, collected deposits under false pretenses, defamed the rightful owner, and repeatedly trespassed despite warnings. We've also notified the Real Estate Licensing Board of these activities." One of the investors, a woman in an expensive suit, turned to the chairman. "You assured us all ownership issues were resolved. Is this true? Have you been collecting deposits for land you don't control?" The chairman's attempt to salvage the situation collapsed when another deputy arrived with additional papers. A search warrant had been issued for the HOA office based on evidence that deposit monies had been mishandled. As it turned out, the deposits had been going directly into an account controlled solely by the chairman rather than an escrow account as legally required for real estate transactions. The aftermath unfolded over the next several months. The chairman resigned from the HOA board under pressure from residents who were horrified by his actions. His real estate license was suspended pending investigation, and he eventually settled our lawsuit for a substantial sum rather than face a public trial where all details would become court record. Several HOA board members who had supported his scheme also resigned. The neighborhood elected a completely new board that immediately adopted stricter ethics guidelines and explicit recognition of property boundaries. The settlement money allowed me to properly restore my grandfather's cabin and establish a formal trail system through the woods. I decided to maintain the wildlife conservation status, which protects the land from future development attempts while allowing me to manage it as my grandfather always had. In a somewhat unexpected turn, my relationship with the neighborhood actually improved after the dust settled. Many residents admitted they'd never believed the rumors about my property and were embarrassed by the HOA actions. Several approached me to apologize personally. One elderly neighbor confessed he'd always enjoyed seeing the property maintained in its natural state, as it reminded him of how the entire area had looked before development. "Your grandfather was right to hold on to it," he told me. "Some things shouldn't be paved over for profit." I now visit the property more frequently, sometimes allowing neighborhood families to enjoy guided nature walks along the carefully maintained trails. The creek where my grandfather taught me to fish now hosts educational programs about local ecosystems for the community's children. At the entrance to the property, I installed a tasteful wooden sign that reads Wildlife Conservation Area with my family name beneath it. It's not overtly triumphant, but anyone who knows the story understands its significance. My grandfather used to say that land was the only thing worth fighting for because they aren't making any more of it. As I sit on the cabin porch watching deer drink from the creek at sunset, I know he would be proud that his woodland sanctuary remains unspoiled, protected not just for our family but for all the creatures that call it home. Sometimes standing your ground is about more than just winning. It's about protecting what matters, not just for yourself, but for generations to come. The next one is entitled People Story. Title: My 27F X 26 meters, dumped me in January after 9 years together because he didn't think I was wife material now. He reached out wanting to talk because he needs to get something off his chest. I don't know why he doing this or if I should met him. I was with my ex, who I will call Nate because if I'm being honest, minus betraying a friend, I was a Cassie. Editor's note: I believe this is a Euphoria TV reference. I don't watch it, but that's what Google says. This has no bearing on the story. I don't want to go too much into the details, but for the last 9 years I lost myself to Nate. He was my world, everything I did was for him. I helped him through depression, helped keep his grades up, even worked 2 jobs so he could focus on collage when his parents disowned him for nearly 3 years because they didn't agree with the major of collage he chose. Bear in mind, I was also a collage student. When his parents started talking to him again and started to financial support him, we moved into a new apartment. Nate said he wanted me to quit my job. I didn't, because it was his turn to take care of me. For 16 months everything was great. He spoiled me. Then I noticed he was more interested in his new friends. At times he ignored me completely. Back in December he did a 180 and he bombed me the whole month. He really went out of his way to make Christmas magical for me. I honestly believed he was going to propose on January the 2nd. He made me my favorite dinner, and made this speech about me being his first love, how I've been there since high school. I kept thinking any minute now he's going to ask me to marry him. But no, he dumped me. As his speech went on, my world fell apart, and as much he tried to sugarcoat it, he basically said, "You were a good girlfriend, but that's what you always be to me, a girlfriend. I don't see you as my wife or the mother of my children. Blah blah, you served your purpose, now I don't need you anymore. Blah blah, I need someone on my level. Blah blah, you're a gold digger. Blah, I'll give you 30 days to move out. I couldn't speak and he stared at me looking for a response. I think this lasted 20 minutes before he said he'd sleep in the guest room then left. Strangely, I didn't cry or get angry, I just ordered cardboard boxes online then went to bed. The next day I waited for him to leave the apartment before I left my room, then I called my boss, asked, begged really, if I could transfer anywhere. She told me there wasn't anything, but if something came up in my department she'd consider me. I then reached out to everyone I knew that wasn't also Nate's friend for a place to stay. My cousin invited me to stay in her spare room for as long as I needed, and I could move in straight away, so that was amazing. In the 4 days it took me to pack my stuff and move out, I didn't see or speak to Nate. I doubt he even noticed. I didn't trust myself at the time to ignore a "you up" text, so I blocked him and everyone close to him, even changed me number/email to make sure he couldn't reach me. The first night at my cousin's was the night everything hit me. I think I cried every night the first month. I honestly felt like crap. I thought about what Nate said over and over again. It made me feel so low, like I was nothing. He only stayed with me because I was just there, but thankfully my cousin sent for my mom, other cousins and real friends to give me an intervention which I badly needed. I believe that first month I wouldn't have made it without my cousin. I'm still healing and waiting on that job transfer because I feel like if I'm not in the same city as Nate and I have a place of my own, the fresh start would do me the world of good. I thought by now I'd be a distant memory for Nate, but shockingly he sent flowers to my job today for my birthday, which was on Sunday. Apparently he went to my parents' house looking for me too. And my mom admitted he's been before dropping off stuff and tried to ask questions about me, but they told him to duck off. The flowers came with a card saying, "Dear Cassie, happy belated birthday. I've been thinking about you for non-stop for the last few months, especially with how everything ended. I need to get something off my chest that I feel will haunt me for the rest of my life, if I don't tell you this to your face, but I've no way of contacting you if it's possible. Can we meet up in the near future, Nate?" What could he want? What's haunting him he needs to say to my face? Everyone in my life is telling me ignore him, but they hate him. I'm torn, but I can't lie. My curiosity is telling me meet him to see what he wants. Has anyone been in my shoes or in Nate's? Update: so we ended up meeting, and no, I didn't go to him. I had told the receptionist at my work if he came looking for just say I'm out for the day after he showed up once. I didn't want the drama of him around my job. So Nate just kept going to my usual places like the grocery store I go every Saturday evening or the park I ran at Sunday mornings, his words, till he would eventually run into me. And he did yesterday. He was waiting at the coffee shop I go to after my morning run. When I saw him I tried to turn around and leave, but he kept calling me, so I thought to myself if everything went pear-shaped a coffee shop would be safer than my walk home. So I just sat down and asked him what he wanted. He gave an apology that wasn't an apology, you know, the type with "I'm sorry but," and "pity me." He blamed his mental health, his job, his parents, his friends, everyone but himself. I took someone's advice on here and said cut the crap, I already know everything. He genuinely looked shocked and stared at me for a second. I guess he thought his coworker already told me everything, so he couldn't lie. Here's what really happened. He fell for a girl in his office. When he told me her name I knew her immediately. I've met her a few times. He told for the last 2 years he idolized her. To be fair, she's beautiful with an amazing personality, and he hated me because I was the one stopping them from being together because his coworker was too classy to be a side piece. When he broke up with me he confessed to her that he was madly in love with her and he ended a 9-year relationship to be with her. Well, here's where it gets funny. She doesn't even like him. Lol, she called him a piece of trash and told him if he ever spoke to her outside work she'd report him to HR. So I asked him, what has any of this got to do with me? Like we are over. I clearly cut ties. There's no reason for us to speak? He wants to try again, promised we'd get married before the year ends, that we belong together. I told him no, I'm nobody's second choice. He threw me away after 9 years and said some pretty cruel things to me. And now he thinks if he snaps his fingers I'll come running back. He tried to beg and fake tears, bringing the good times in our relationship. I told him please leave me alone as he wasted too much of my time already. I texted my cousin to meet me at the coffee shop. He kept saying nonsense, even suggested if I went to couples counseling for a few months he'd leave me alone. The 20 minutes it took for my cousin to arrive felt like 20 years. In the end I just stopped listening and stood at the counter making small talk with baristas till my cousin arrived. She told him to duck off and if he tried to follow us she'd call her brothers. He stayed in the coffee shop as far as I know and we just went home, that's it. It's only been a day but I feel like it's over and I'm free of him. The next one is entitled People Story. OG post. My boss is notorious for never reading an email. Over the past year, she has sent me multiple emails asking questions, when the answers could be found in the email she was already responding to. This all came to a head with a conference. She asked me if I wanted to attend a conference and I responded yes. She then asked if I would register everyone for the event. I asked for details about the registration. She forwarded an email with these details, and that email also contained many questions. Knowing her, I asked her if she had responded to those questions. She replied, "What questions?" Literally scroll up and look at the email. Now, having been made aware of these questions by me, she asked me to respond to them. One question was if we wanted to host a booth at the conference, which she said yes. I responded with answers and checked it off my list. She received an email late March stating they hadn't received our registration yet and that they needed it by April 1st. She forwarded me this communication April 2nd and asked me to handle it. No, I didn't forget. The conference had a tech issue and I cleared it up. But she sent me the email to handle this after it was already late. This was the last communication I received about this conference until 4 a.m. day of the event. I logged on at the start of my workday at 8 a.m. to see 2 emails from her. One, a forward at 4 a.m., dated over a week prior, with details for setup for the booth and how it started at 7 a.m. Mind you, the conference is an hour drive for me. At 6 a.m., another email, asking if I had everything good to go for our booth. When I logged on at 8 a.m., I replied and said due to not receiving this information until this morning, I would not have time to go back to the office and retrieve the booth materials and still arrive at the conference on time. I shut my computer and drove to the conference. When I arrived, I had a pretty nasty email from her stating she had asked me to handle the booth, so of course we would be having one and that I needed to go back to the office and get it. I replied that I was driving and now arrived at the conference, and that there was a box at the other office, 10 minutes away from the conference, that she could grab on our way in. She did grab it and we had a booth. She came up to me at the conference asking what had gone wrong, and I told her simply that I did not have this information until this morning and planned my workday around the information I had. She has now asked for a meeting with me tomorrow morning. I feel as though she is going to try to place blame on me here, and I don't know how to respectfully tell her this is her fault. She did not provide me the info. She did not ask me to bring anything. She asked me to respond to an email, which I did. I want to express my frustration and how her lack of reading an email has continuously created more work that either gets trashed because she didn't read the info and now has scrapped the project after the work was completely done, or makes me have to make last-minute stressful adjustments for information she had weeks ago and never sent. But I also can't get fired in this job economy. What do I do when she inevitably places the blame of this on me tomorrow? Update: to clear some things up for those of you claiming I lack initiative and this was on me, I have started many projects from day one that have been solely on me and my ideas. I've started committees and implemented new marketing that has been wildly successful, simply because I saw the need for it at the org. You also seem to have missed the part where I say I frequently get the go-ahead for projects, but because she didn't read the email fully, after completion of the project she scraps it. I understand that this can look like lack of initiative, but trust me, if you knew all the ins and outs about this organization you would not think that. Many of my co-workers have these same issues with her. It's illogical to blame all of us when the common denominator is her. To those asking why I did not follow up, hindsight is 20/20, and yes, there was more I could do to ensure all ran smoothly, but at the end of the day, that is her job. I already caught many mistakes on this conference alone, like the fact that she didn't even read the questions to begin with. To talk about how jobs require to manage up seems like a way to blame low-level employees for the mistakes of their managers. If you don't have the ability to manage, don't be a manager. Plain and simple. The wording to me was to respond to the questions. After the 4 a.m. email, she claimed she asked me to handle it. Had this been the wording from the beginning, maybe this would have ended differently. Many of you are saying she delegated the entire conference to me, and this was not the case. She asked me to do 2 things, which I did. Not to mention, in the past when I have followed up to ensure she has gotten things done, she responds very irritated as if I am implying she cannot do her job. This conference is not the typical place we would host a booth for, so after completing my task, it left my brain. It was also outside of my normal scope of work. I've had many managers who are great at their job, and I love being able to take stuff off their plate and make their day easier. I cannot do that with someone who does not communicate and does not manage. To those asking why I didn't call her instead of emailing and leaving, she was in a meeting and I had to leave within 5 minutes to attend the conference on time. To those saying if she's responding to emails at 4 a.m. she must be swamped with work, so give her a break. She frequently boasts about how she works unusual hours. It is normal for me to wake up with many emails from her during that time and not be able to reach her in the afternoon. No, I am not an on-call employee. All in all, with how frequently she doesn't read emails, this was bound to happen one day, so it's frustrating that many of you are blaming me and expecting me to magically know the details of emails I never received. But I do appreciate your perspective. Now to the conversation. It went very well for what it was. I built it up in my head based on previous experiences with her. There still seemed to be some notions of her trying to blame me and saying she had handed this off to me, and so she didn't look at her other emails related to it thinking I had it handled. She said her perspective was that I would be the point of contact. And I told her I didn't feel that expectation was received. I explained that I had done the things she asked and was unaware that the expectation was for me to be a point of contact, and therefore did not relay that info to them and never received further communication. I said going forward it would be helpful that when I bring up the things I am working on at our one-on-ones, that is my exhaustive list, and if there is something on there she is thinking I am handling that I did not mention, I need to be aware of the expectation to complete that project, and that this will help us be on the same page about expectations. I didn't say this, but on my end, I thought that was the entire point of a one-on-one, and I'm wondering why she hasn't been doing that all along. Why didn't she bring up this conference at previous one-on-ones when I didn't say it was on my list? She mentioned something about how she doesn't want to micromanage and just lets everyone run with things. In my opinion, this is a cop-out to not be a manager at all. You can effectively manage without being a micromanager. I told her I don't need someone to micromanage me, I just need clear communication of what is expected of me. If you want me to be handling a project, and not just a quick task for it, I need to be told that I'm in charge of the project. I don't see that as micromanaging. Overall, although the convo went better than expected, I'm still frustrated because she seems oblivious to her role in all this. To her fairness, she did ask me to come to her with things she is doing that upset me. But I genuinely don't know how to respectfully tell me boss to just read emails because she constantly misses details. And, in a previous experience, when told to come to superiors with issues, I did, and they let me go. It wasn't a job, but for the purposes of this, it works. So I don't exactly feel confident telling her things she's doing wrong. Immediately after my meeting, my coworker told me about issues she was having with her because of the inability to slow down and read an email. It takes us so much more time to go back and forth in communication than if she were to just read it the first time. I would have felt a lot better at the end if she had owned up to how she didn't properly communicate with me, because I still feel like she blames me for this on her end. Hopefully things will get better moving forward because this is really the only negative thing about my job. The pay, flexibility, schedule, and healthcare are all fabulous, and I don't want to lose that finding a new job, so I've been toughing it out. I'm trying to have a positive outlook, but these frustrations have been building for so long I'm having a hard time being optimistic. Thank you for everyone who validated my feelings and gave me advice. And thank you to those who provided other perspectives respectfully. I do appreciate seeing the other side when it's not presented in a rude manner. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.